So what do we do? What do we do? Well, you will have heard from Tim about kind of the talking bit and the delivery and the communication bit of the whole endeavor. But there's quite a lot more that goes with it when you actually go to a church, you turn up, and visiting a church you've never been to before. If you're anything like me, that just, even though this is my job, I'm a natural introvert. So the idea of walking in an unknown location with a load of unknown people is fairly horrid. So and the way you can make that easier for yourself is just having as much information as possible. And I'm kind of going to go over some of the things you might want to think about or consider prior to the event and what it might look like when you actually get there. So let's assume then that you are speaking at a church on Sunday. You've had a call from Holly or Vladdy, and they've said, yeah, we've got you booked in. You've got a 20-minute talk. You're presenting the work of compassion. You can share a bit about what you're doing, and you're going to have a table set up at the end where you can, much like many of you will have experienced in your churches, maybe the first time you sponsored was someone doing this very thing in your church. And then you can hang around at the end, chat to people, and kind of go over what sponsorship is, and maybe have the children's profiles in front of you. In the week leading up to, or at least at the earliest reasonable opportunity, I would suggest that you get in touch with the church pastor or the main contact at the church. Now, a lot of the work in terms of organizing the thing in the first place will have been done for you, but I would say, very much as a courtesy, if nothing else, you're going to be speaking in their church, you're going to be preaching, perhaps you're going to be kind of using up their pulpit for the morning. The least you could do is give them a call and introduce yourself. So I would say tip number one, if you've I was about to say I'll send this out as notes, but you wouldn't want to read my notes, so maybe just if you can, or I'll make something a bit nicer, but maybe write a couple of these bits down if you feel them helpful to you. But I would say in the week leading up, do get in touch with the church pastor or the main contact as a courtesy, but it also gives you the opportunity to ask some questions. And the questions I would be quick to ask, assuming I hadn't already had the meeting prior. So first, would it be the first thing? I would probably want to know what time to get there. That's probably the top of my list. What time do I get there? What time do you want me there? Two different questions. If the meeting's at 9, what time do I get there? 5 to 9 is not, what time do you want me there? And the church pastor will say, well, we pray 15 minutes before the meeting. So what that should be telling you is I need to have been ready and set up before they start praying. You shouldn't be doing up your banner or getting the profiles out while they're praying in the holy front left corner of the church, which obviously is more holy than the rest of the church. And you want to be making sure that you are there in good time. Of course, you are their guest speaker. There's going to be elements that you want to get sorted when you get there. For example, have you got any media with you? Have you got a PowerPoint presentation? Have you got a video to show? All things you'd very likely have. Now, my general guidance with videos and media, here are my two things. One, can you do your preach without them? Because if you can't, you need to rewrite your preach so you can, because media never works when you need it to. Okay, so your message, whatever you're bringing, needs to be doable in some capacity and to a high standard if the media is not going to work. Okay, now you want to try and make it work, you want to try and be ready for it to work. So I would suggest the second thing, send it in advance or ask someone from the Compassion office to get it to them. If it's a video of one of our marketing videos, we can send it to them ahead of time. We can make sure they've got it. You don't need to worry about that, and it will help the church more if they've got it in advance. So if you've got, what I'm trying to say is don't turn up with 5 videos and 20 PowerPoints and 400 photos of your sponsored child on a memory stick the morning and assume it will work, because it may well not. The other things I would probably ask, apart from what time to get there, and I suppose I've gone into a different point as well about being prepared, but also I would probably inquire about the parking situation. May not seem like a big deal at the time, but if you've just managed to get there on time and you've realised you can't actually park outside the church building and you've got to find a multi-storey 15-minute walk away, probably worth knowing ahead of time. So speak to the church leader. Is that allocated parking? Is there any parking? would it be really cheeky to have a space that, you know, that they could keep for you, just so that you can guarantee yourself that you'll get there and you'll be outside the building? Worth inquiring about. And of course, if you're using public transport, you know, the tube or whatever, just accounting for those times and potential delays as well. I would ask how, you know, where you're coming into the church. Are you going in from a back door because you're there early? Is the front door going to be open? You know, they seem like small things, but if you turn up to the church and you're banging on the front door and you realize actually there's a little side door that's been open the whole time, it's a little bit embarrassing. So just checking these details. Maybe check with the pastor if they're actually going to be there that morning. What time are they going to get there? Sometimes the church pastors, we love them all, but sometimes the fact you're there, they'll take a week off, not because you are there and they want to not be near you, but because they can have a week off because they're not preaching. So maybe find out if they're going to be there. And if they're not, who's your next point of contact? You don't want to turn up and the only person you know is the pastor, and then you've got nobody else and you just sort of stand there like a lemon, not really knowing who to talk to. So if they're not going to be there, is there a premises person? Is there somebody else that you can get in touch with on the morning to make sure you're there and you can get in the building at the right time? What time is it? Oh, dress code. Dress code's a contentious issue, so I won't. I'm not going to go through every conceivable combination of your clothing that might be appropriate. But don't be scared to ask the church leader what the general vibe is. I've done it before, and I'll tell you what, it takes a load off your shoulders to know that actually, you know, jeans and a nice jumper and shoes is fine. You know, and you're not worried about. Because it's one thing to walk into a brand new space with new people. It's another thing to walk into a space with brand new people feeling grossly underdressed or grossly overdressed. So it's worth knowing what's the vibe for the church. And many of you, there will be a fairly wide spectrum of what is appropriate. And I'm not here to tell you what is and isn't. I'm just saying, try and get a vibe for the church. And if you're too scared to ask, check on the church website. And there'll probably be a picture of them in the building and you can make a guess. And there's one other specific thing. Some people like to go in their compassion t-shirts. I say absolutely fine. Of course, you are there representing compassion, unless your compassion t-shirt is falling to pieces and it looks disgusting. Just look nice at least. I was told by a female that you shouldn't wear a dress. I cannot comment. I will choose not to. But she said if you can wear trousers, because you can hook the mic onto the trousers a bit more easily than perhaps a dress, or at least, you know, something without pockets or whatever. So I'll let the women kind of make a decision on that. I choose not to, but a female member of staff recommended not wearing a dress where possible. Cool, okay. In terms of the table setup, maybe try and find out ahead of time where you're setting up or where you're expected to set up, or even where the best place would be. It might be a flexible thing. And they might say, actually, loads of people queue up for coffee here. That would be a really good place to set your table up. That'd be a really good place to kind of get good traffic, I guess, and be able to have good conversations with people. You know, in the middle of a doorway, probably not great, because people are just trying to get over and around you. So, you know, try and find a decent place to stop and check. Last question for the church pastor. I know I'm going at a massively fast pace here. Maybe I should give you some better notes, but we'll go with what we've got for now. So when you're talking to the church pastor, whoever it is, it's really important to get what I would just call a good lay of the land. What's the context of the church right now? Recently, I spoke to a church and I was delivering a message, or was planning to, and I'm sorry it's so morbid, but someone had recently died in the church. So there was the church was actually going through a bit of a grieving thing. So if I jump in with a kind of happy-go-lucky, you know, this big upbeat thing, actually I might have been completely tone deaf, and you know, I just have to adjust my message accordingly. I'm not saying rewrite the whole thing, but it's worth just understanding what's the context of the church right now. Have the church just had a massive gift day and everyone's given away all their money? Well, it's worth knowing. Like, it's just helps you just, you know, not be too tone deaf and you know, just you can imagine the blank faces staring back at you because they've already, maybe none of them are employed, or some awful thing has just happened in the church and you're talking about this wonderful, lovely little charity that, do you see what I mean? I hope that's clear to all of you. In terms of delivering your message and the practicalities of the beginning, middle and end, allow enough time at the end of the whole service, that is. Don't book your shop in to arrive just after, so you can quickly, assuming you're going to be able to quickly dash home and be there for your shopping to turn up. Probably not going to happen. I would allow really good amount of time at the end of the service. Ultimately, you don't want to be rushing people because you're stressed. People are having really deep and meaningful conversations with you about your talk or their sponsored child or something like that. You don't want to be rushing them along. It's not, it's not very considerate and not very kind. So just allow enough time in the end. In terms of paper, if you're going to use paper for your notes, just minimize the amount of sheets you've got. For me, I'm all about the bullet point, and I talk around a bullet point. Partly because I don't want to be reading my notes, but also if you drop the whole lot from a pulpit that's maybe a few feet off the main floor, nothing worse than having to get on your hands and knees and gather them all up in order. Absolutely not. That's my worst nightmare. It's like an awkward moment from The Office or something where everyone's just watching in silence as the mic's crunkling and you're grabbing all these pieces of paper and trying to put them back in order. It's just my worst nightmare. So if you are going to use paper, just keep them brief, keep the font big, and don't have too many. That's my advice for that. And introduce when you arrive and you get there first thing, introduce yourself to as many people who are in the church as you possibly can. Again, because if the pastor runs off because they're busy, as they likely are on a Sunday morning, they're not at your beck and call all morning. So if you need a hand, or you need to find out where the toilet is, or you need to find a coffee or whatever, hopefully you've introduced yourself to the sound guy and they can tell you. So just, have a few people on hand to give you a hand when you need it, because it's pretty likely you're not going to know where anything or anyone is at any time, apart from the fact that you're so stressed about thinking about the fact you have to deliver a talk to this church in half an hour. So, just have a few people on your side, get to know a few people, and then they can give you a hand, so you're not stressing about running around trying to find the toilet just before the service, because that would be less than ideal. Right, I don't know how long I've gone for. I totally lost track of time then. Alex, how am I doing?
You're absolutely fine, Toby. Another 3 minutes, 4 minutes if you want them, but
I'll do one more point.
Give these lovely people some time back if you.
I'll do one more point, which is just more to do with the first stuff, and then I will call it quits, because I've talked 100 miles an hour, as I often do. Just in terms of maybe the week lead up or the night before, do you just do a little bit of a look? I was saying about the context of the church, get the lay of the land. It's no bad thing to check the church website just before you go. Maybe have a look at the last preach just before yours. Are they in a preaching series about the gospel? Well, could you land a bit of gospel in your preach just to keep it in context with the church? And you know what? I think it's completely okay, and some people might disagree with me, to ask about the general demographic of a church, just to get a vibe before you go. Who are you going to be talking to? What's the general, who am I going to be speaking to prior to me getting there? It will help me tailor my message and serve your church better, because ultimately, and I'll leave you with this, we are trying to serve the church as best we can. They are not trying to serve us. And if I'm getting there late and I'm causing them stress because I can't get my AVs working, or I can't get my mic working, or my computer's not working because I tried to upload too much, or I haven't sent them stuff in advance. All of these things, whilst they might embarrass you, actually, they're ultimately going to mean you're not serving the church very well and you're not serving them well. So we want to be stewards of their time and we want to serve them as well as we can. And I think some of these things will help you do that.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Toby, for sharing that. And I could see lots of you just making notes and stuff as Toby was going through. But we are recording the session as well. So if you didn't manage to keep up with absolutely everything Toby was saying, then feel free to watch back when we send out the link later. I can see my colleague James Waddle has got his hand raised like a like a good little schoolboy.
He's my boss, so I don't know what he's going to say now.
James, what would you like to add?
No, it was just a couple of things. Well done, Toby. Nothing much to add, really. Just 2 quick points. And we chatted about this in our own group, in Group 5, which incidentally was actually the best route. But anyway, we'll move on from there. The most important thing you can do when you arrive at a church, be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to decide that you're going to be a Billy Graham or whoever your pastor is and you think they're a brilliant speaker. Be yourself. Open your heart, share your heart, be yourself. Second thing, respect time. Toby said, oh, am I nearly out of time? Am I almost over time? If we're given 5 minutes on a Sunday morning, we take 5 minutes. If we're given 20, we 20. We're there as guests, and it's very and I can tell you from my own experience, particularly those first few occasions when you go to speak somewhere, I guarantee you could speak for an hour. You will have enough material to speak for an hour. But if you've got 5 minutes, respect the 5 minutes, condense it, get the main points in. That's so important that we do that, because I guarantee you will have loads of material, more than you've got time for. So it's so important that you craft it into the time that you're allowed. But certainly from what I saw, the group I was in, very excited about what God's going to do with you folks over the coming months. Anyway, Alex, I'm done.
Thanks, James. No, really good point to add. Great. I'm really excited to hand over to Hilary now, who is going to introduce us to a couple more guests for this evening, who are guys that are active Compassion volunteer speakers, and they just want to share a little bit of their experience with you, and hopefully it's a massive encouragement and a real inspiration too. So Hilary, over to you to introduce our special guests.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I'm very, very excited to introduce you to 2 of our amazing experienced volunteers who can really just tell you how it feels to be in that place of sort of speaking for the first time, and things that they've learned over their time of being volunteers. So first of all, we're going to hear from Amy, and she's going to give us a few of her top tips. And hopefully I can share my screen, because Amy has given us some little photos to share with you. So Amy, over to you, and I will share my screen once people have seen your lovely face. Here she is. Thanks, Amy. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all, and it's great to see so many volunteers wanting to speak on behalf of Compassion. So I have 5 minutes, so let's see how well I do with my time. I'm going to start my clock. Okay, so my top tips. So some of them have already been mentioned briefly by Toby, which is great to hear, because it just means that I'm saying the right thing. So tip number 1, want to do it. You have to want to do it. Sometimes life can be busy, and it's okay to say no. So I just want to kind of reiterate that it's okay to say no when Compassion get in touch and they say, can you help? And you just can't. You're too busy. You haven't got the time on that day. You'll be rushing. Like Toby said, just make sure that you're available, because the church want you there and they want all of your time. They don't just want some of it. So there's nothing wrong with saying no. Although if you really want to say yes, then go for it, because you'll do great. And so I want to so there's nothing worse than volunteering because you're asked to do it and just because you said yes for the sake of it. But then you find yourself in unfamiliar surroundings, so things like a different church, a different culture, different location. Is the crowd too big or too small for you than you're used to? Is the crowd too young or too old than you're used to? All of these can alter our confidence, and so I want you to be comfortable with your yes and your no. What may be perfect for somebody else might not be perfect for you, so just make sure that you have really thought and prayed into that. Okay, so top tip number 2, find your passion about compassion. So you've all just shared your story with each other, and hopefully you will have dug in and found a little bit of that passion about why you love compassion. And so that feedback that you've just received, take it in and remember to share that element that you've just been praised on, because it will move people and stir people in the right direction of them potentially sponsoring a child, not necessarily in that moment, but a moment in the future. What you're doing is planting a seed for them to have that stirred within their hearts. In 2004, I sponsored my first child. In 2005, I volunteered. In fact, no, 2005, I volunteered with, no, I sponsored my first child. 2006, I volunteered with Compassionate Soul Survivor. And I asked God to break my heart for what breaks his in 2007, and ended up gate crashing the Compassion stand and speaking on behalf of those that don't have a voice. So after 15 years of gate crashing, well, not 15 years, but after about 5 years of gate crashing, I decided to actually become a proper fully fledged volunteer after much persuasion. So I've been doing it a long time. Met my husband, and he not only adopted me, but my many children that I have. So also, if you're not sure what your passion about compassion is, ask your friends and family what your passions are, so that you can put those into your talk. Top tip number 3, be yourself. And as I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he just said it, be yourself. It's your best version, double chin and all. We often aspire to be the person at the front that we so often see, but actually your voice is the best voice that people will need to hear. So find your sparkle, find what it is that makes you really want to give your best, and God will show it you. Maybe not in the first session. The first session's always the worst, have to say. But as you do more and more of these talks, you will get better and you will have more confidence, even though you might go into it nervous every single time. Okay, so top tip number 4, be prepared and for change too. So Toby definitely touched on this. We don't go on holiday without a suitcase. We pack our bags and we get our passport and we get our tickets. That is exactly the same as preparing for a talk. You are going to say yes to wanting to prepare. So you're going to write a talk, you're going to get all your props, you're going to organize the photos, you're going to organize the videos. Some of you may be more tech savvy than others. I am not tech savvy. I might seem it, but I'm really not. And so I love a bit of paper because that's just me. And my 5 minutes is up, but we're nearly there. So where am I? Again, this is the worst thing about having paper and then going ad hoc and then coming back to the paper. This is what you shouldn't do when giving a talk. Okay, so change. Just going back, sorry, just to the change bit. Often things do change, and so just be prepared for that. If you follow top tip number 1 and top tip number 2 with your passion and wanting to do it, then that's all you need ultimately. If everything else goes wrong and the PowerPoint can't work and nothing's going right at all, your passion and your wanting to be there will get you through, because that's what you're there to do. Okay, and now my last top tip. Where's my bit of paper? Share your story and allow it to evolve. Don't be afraid to show emotion. It's okay to laugh and cry. So I used to share when I first came into Compassion, the very first letter that I received from my first child, and it was about her favourite pastime, and it was to play with mud, and how that broke my heart. But yet it was so humbling too that she only needed mud to have enjoyment in life. And so in my early years of serving with Compassion, I met some amazing volunteers at Soul Survivor, and they were from Uganda, and they were compassion children. And so I just soaked in their stories and then shared their stories. So my storytelling evolved from that, of the letter, to now personal experience of people, well, children who have now become adults and living a well life. But then 2019, I went to Rwanda and Kenya and met 4 of my children. And again, my story has completely evolved. And so just evolve your story, learn more about other compassion children and adults, and know their stories, because their stories become your stories. And lastly, my ultimate top tip: always invite Jesus with you. Without him, we are just an empty vessel. So for where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with you. So Matthew 18:20. So yeah, I've probably gone about 7 minutes or 8 minutes over, but hey, 7 minutes and 37. Not too bad.
Amy, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Bless you. Those are fantastic tips, which I'm sure everybody will really appreciate and are so helpful. So thank you. Just coming from someone who's done so much volunteering for us, and bless you for all that you have done and continue to do for Compassion. We're so grateful, and thank you so much for coming along and sharing your tips. That was excellent, and I love the photos too. Thank you. So I think you're going to stick around for the next bit, and we're going to have some opportunity for people to ask questions after Ian's spoken next. So if anyone has any questions for Amy, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. And also Ian, we're going to hear from now. Ian's going to tell us a little bit about what he really loves about Compassion. So another of our amazing volunteers. Over to you, Ian.
Great, thanks, Hilary. Well, I get the prize for the worst lighting ever because I'm actually sat in my car, so apologies for this looking like I'm about to tell a horror story or something. That's not what Compassion is. Why do I speak for them? Because I get itchy, and because Holly told me. But the reality is, what do I mean? Well, I think when we're in our faith, God gives us an itch to scratch, and each itch is the next step we have to take. And my journey really with Compassion began by sponsoring my first child, and I was very fortunate to be able to go out to the Philippines and actually meet her. She was 4 years old when I started sponsoring her. She's now 9, so it's 5 years ago. And while I was out there, I just really felt God speak to me and saying there's much, much more you can do for this. And what struck me out there, I think, was the level of effort that Compassion put into making sure that whatever money is gained for that child reaches the child. They make sure that it's not been spent with the parents and things it shouldn't be. You know, there's that great custodianship that takes place. And there's a great saying in Compassion, you know, you can save the world one child at a time. But the problem is, as I'm sure many of you know, when you sponsor one child, you want the next, and then you want the next, and the next, and the next. And you really do want to save the world. Most of us don't have a bank account that's going to support that. The chances are we haven't got the time to be writing all the letters that actually go out to enable us to do that. But actually, me scratching that itch is to go out and talk and to share the passion, to share the amazing work that everybody at Compassion actually does, every other speaker that's out there. Because for every child that gets sponsored as a result of my inept talk sometimes, is another child saved. And it's another example that's being set to everybody who sponsors, who then says, well, actually, have you thought about sponsoring a child as well? And you know, I think for me, the scripture that really shouts out to that, and one that's been shared already, is that whatever you do for the least of them, so you do for me. This is what Jesus actually tells us to do. And there's another really, really solid teaching, which is you're not giving your faith for you. You're saved for you, but you're not giving your faith for you. You are giving your faith to share it, to not hide your light under the bushel. There's the scripture. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Why would you do that? What good salt when it's lost its saltiness? So I should be going out there. You know, Jesus has put his faith in you. He trusts you. He knows you probably better than you know yourself. He certainly knows your capabilities. And so, as James said, don't go in thinking, oh, I've got all this stuff to say, I'm not sure what's going to be done. Actually, you don't need to. All you need is your passion. All you need is the knowledge of your own sponsorship. All you need is what compassion actually does. And if you don't remember the facts, whatever you do, don't make them up. Just be honest. Just say, look, I was going to tell you about this, but you know what? I can't remember. And I have done that, trust me. And if you can go out there, what you're actually saying is not so much the words, it's your emotion, it's the behaviors, it's the love. And it's already said, it's your passion for compassion that you want to convey, because you haven't got the time to be stood up there sharing absolutely everything. As James said, give 5 minutes, you want half an hour. Well, I'm a Scotsman like he is. Give me half an hour or 5 minutes, I want about 3 days. You haven't got time to do it. All you need to be doing is to plant the seed. The Bible tells us Jesus saves, only Jesus saves. He is the only way. You aren't going to save anyone. What you're going to do is to plant that seed that hopefully after the service, people are going to come and talk to you. They're going to ask about sponsoring a child, and hopefully they will. And if you don't get any sponsorship, that doesn't mean you failed. You simply planted the seed. So what I absolutely love to do, and why I love going out talking there, is because there's no pressure. I get to talk about something I absolutely love talking about, which is the children that are sponsoring, the work that Compassion does. And the rest of it, I just leave to Jesus and the Spirit. And people hopefully will come and talk to me. So why do I do it? Because I love it. I take pride in it. I love what Compassion does, and I take pride in the fact Jesus trusts me to do it. I love the fact that when I stand up there, Jesus stands at that shoulder and the Spirit stands at this one. And I just say what needs to be said. And at the end of it, hopefully children get sponsored. And don't think you're necessarily going to go and get reams and reams and reams of paper filled out for new children to be sponsored. 1, 2 or 3 is enough. But it's such a great feeling when somebody says, can I sponsor this child, please? You've helped Jesus to achieve that. You've used your faith. You have been a good servant. And that's the real point of Compassion. And that's why I love doing it. I get to scratch that itch where God says, I want to use you for something. Go and do your job. And that's it, briefly. So thank you for giving me the chance to share.
Oh, yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, like you say, we see your passion, and we thank you for sharing it, and for sharing it when you speak in churches and groups as well. So it was really so helpful. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed that. So yeah, so now we're just going to have an opportunity if anybody has any questions at all. And you can ask questions of any of us, or I'm sure Amy and Ian would be happy to answer any questions as well if people have questions for you guys. Has anyone got anything they'd like to ask at this point?
Yeah. So very, very practical one, thinking about Toby's talk. Just if you are going, so like I'm on public transport, I say I'm going to a church that's a distance, the child profiles. I mean, I remember getting like being able to look through quite a few. How logistically, how do they get to where they need to get to? The right ones.
I think it's fair to, what we can do if that's going to be an issue, or we know in advance, we can actually just send them to the church ahead of time, and they could just be there already.
So you just leave that for you to, because you would have all like the sort of research, do you know what I mean? The ones that are these.
Yeah, I don't want you like a one-man band through the tubes. You know what I mean? We don't need to do that. We can send stuff ahead to churches, and we've got a lovely team in the office that do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. Yeah, absolutely. We'll send anything out that you need. We usually try and provide our speakers with a pull-up banner, which we can send to you in advance, and then you keep to sort of use when you go and speak. But if that's tricky for you to carry about, then it's not the end of the world. We may be able to get one to the church, or else, we don't worry. But yeah, we certainly won't overload you with stuff, and we can send it in advance if need be. So anything else anybody's got?
Yeah, I've got one. This is a sort of practical, well, it's a knowledge thing, really. One lady in our church, who was quite senior. She was probably in her 80s. She said, well, I want to sponsor a child, but I feel nervous that, you know, I don't know how long I'm going to be around for, and I don't want to sort of have the child go through a situation where suddenly the sponsorship stops. So what's the answer when somebody sponsors and then stops sponsoring? What happens to the child? They remain part of the project. If you know, what's the ideal answer to keep that person wanting to sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. The child will certainly stay in the project, and they will sort of go to the top of the list for another sponsor. So we will try and find another sponsor for them as soon as possible. They won't lose any benefits other than obviously they won't have a sponsor for a little while, perhaps until we get the next sponsor in place. Often where they're elderly people, sometimes we might encourage them to have an older child. Sometimes they ask if they can sponsor an older child, because then they sort of feel, well, actually I might only be here for a couple of years, you know, particularly if they're poorly or something. And they think, well, I'd rather just have an older child who, you know, won't be in the project for quite so long. But yeah, we can certainly make sure that child is re-sponsored if something does happen, or, you know, some people lose their jobs or whatever, their circumstances change, you know, and they can't continue to sponsor. So we would find another sponsor as soon as possible.
Yeah, and even if there's a big gap, they're not, you know, they still remain part of the project. They're not.
Absolutely.
They don't lose out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really encouraging to know. Well, yeah, that's a good message. Yeah.
And also just to say that children are registered in the project before they get sponsored. So they do actually start to get a lot of the benefits even before the sponsor's on board. But obviously having a sponsor is the special thing, that they're so thrilled when they actually do get their own sponsor. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for that.
I don't know if anyone else has got anything else to add. Ian, did you want to comment?
Yes, I was just going to say, if I could. Yeah, I mean, I think that touches on a really important point, because I think there is a need to be aware that just because somebody approaches you to sponsor a child, it might not be right for them. And I'm thinking particularly, you know, you may have somebody who's got additional needs. They may be extremely elderly, and that can result in a degree of mental incapacity as well. And so while they may be led to sponsor, I think you just need to be very careful as to whether or not they've actually got the ability to make that decision. And the problem is, if that approaches you, you need to have a way of dealing with that in not just a moral way, but actually a compassionate way. And the best thing I found to actually deliver that is to say something along the lines of, you know, that's so great that, you know, you've come up to approach about sponsoring a child, and, you know, there are a whole lot to think about here, and we've got a lot of children. You know, why don't you have a chat about it with your family, or if you've got another family member here you might want to talk about, or perhaps one of your elders in your church could take you through exactly what it entails. And it kind of then gets them talking about it. And I've had 2 or 3 instances now where I've had one of the leaders in the church come up and say, you know, thanks so much for thinking about it in that way. And if you think about it, you know, perhaps it's the same thing if you're a younger child that came up on their own and say, I'd like to sponsor someone, you'd probably react in a very similar way. So as well as your elderly person maybe being concerned about what happens if they can't keep up with it, I think you also need to be asking the question, have they got the capacity to make that decision and really understand what they're taking on?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, Ian. Thank you for raising that. And obviously, if you are concerned that somebody might be too vulnerable, then, you know, obviously, if they want to sign up, then you can sort of let the office know, and we can sort of make sure that we communicate and find out exactly what their situation is. Because yeah, we have sort of things in place to protect vulnerable people and things like that. So thank you very much for that. Anybody else want to comment on that point? Or I think Richard's got his hand up.
Yeah, hi there, Hilary. Yeah,
hi.
A practical question, really. Will we generally be asked to visit a church which is within our county or further afield? You know, like what's the kind of radius do you think we'll be kind of invited into?
Great question. What we'll do is ask you how far you sort of feel you can travel, what radius you're happy to travel, and obviously we'll try and keep our requests within that. So it's up to you to tell us really, you know, whether you're happy to go 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever it is. Then we can sort of make a note of that as well, and then we won't ask you to sort of travel further than you're happy to do. We can also give you some travel expenses if we're asking you to go, you know, long distance. Then we're happy to sort of reimburse petrol and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Okay?
It's more actually for, you know, inclement weather during the winter when I know you've got to do, you know, 60 or 70 miles. It gets things like that, you know. So okay, that's
yeah,
fine.
sure.
Love to know that.
Yeah, no, we certainly wouldn't expect you to go further than you're prepared to.
Right.
That's absolutely fine. Got no problem at all with
Okay.
that. But
Thank
thank you for making that point. That's good. Any further questions? Just let me check in my.
Hilary, I just had one question.
Yeah.
Hello. So the compassion profiles that we take of the children, am I right in saying they sort of get taken off a system for a certain length of time and people can take them away and think about them? But what's that time limit that we're going to need to tell them they need to sort of make a decision, yes or no, in that time before they then go back into the pool? Because I'd hate to tell someone that they've got a month and then they've actually got 2 weeks and they come to us a month later and say, this is the child I want to sponsor. And in that time, they've gone back into the pool and been sponsored by somebody else.
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. Great question. We would actually encourage people where at all possible to fill in the form before they leave. If they don't feel they can fill in the payment details on the spot, that's absolutely fine. But we would ask if they want to take a profile away with them that we at least have contact details. Now, the children are assigned usually for 2 weeks, sometimes different lengths of time, but usually it's 2 weeks, I believe. And so, you know, they obviously have a little bit of time to think. But once we've got their contact details, then we can contact them.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we give them time to think if they want a little time to think about it. But if you could please just get their contact details before they take a profile away, so that we know, okay, that person is interested in that child, and we can contact them and find out if they want to go ahead with the sponsorship. Yeah, we often talk at events where they hand out profiles, at big events, we often just hand profiles out. And we remind people, please bring your profile back before you leave the event. Mm-hmm. And we say, we don't want you to kidnap any children. So sort of encourage them, as I say, just to let us know if they're interested in that particular child, and then we can contact them.
Perfect.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So I think Claire, I think, had a question, and then I've got Nikki's got her hand up as well. So Claire first. Is she? Oh, perhaps not.
There we go. I've got it.
Oh, here we go. Thanks.
Work around people's like jobs and professional, because sometimes we have like stupidly busy times, like, and then other times we've got more time. I'm thinking school holidays and things, and like,
sure.
Like, so does it work around that, or because, you know, I wouldn't want to
absolutely
be like, no, I can't do it because it's stupidly busy, and then have other times where I've got a lot more time where I could do it, and like, you know. The other one is a bit of a strange one as well. I think it's just probably just me in my odd mind thinking about it. But when I first started sponsoring, I didn't tell anybody about it because I thought about Matthew 6:3, where it says, don't let your, about giving, where don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And so I didn't share it and everything like that. And obviously it's a great thing to share with other people and to share that sponsorship and that giving. But how do you reconcile that scripturally with like not kind of, you know what I mean, like giving without kind of crowing about it? And
yeah,
I've got just that thing in this question in my head about it, like not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
so that God sees it and not just giving like for other people and that kind of thing is like how is that kind of reconciled with, like, you know, what we're doing is kind of like I don't know. It's just me with that question.
Can I come in on that one, because I think that touches on the point I was making around, you know, there's also the scripture, don't hide your light under the bushel.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a faith to share, and I think it depends on why you do it. Now, if you stood up and said, look at me, I'm great because I'm sponsoring these children, aren't I a wonderful person? You'd be absolutely right. That's about your own pride. That's about building yourself up. But if you're going out and saying to people, you know, I sponsor this child, it's so amazing when I got a letter coming through the door, this is how it feels, and your intention and your purpose is to encourage other people and to explain to them what a great thing it is you're doing, much the same as when you go up in church to talk, then actually what you're doing is you're taking that bushel off your light and you're letting that shine through, which is why I think it's so important to let your emotion and your passion speak as much as your words. So it's about your intention. You're there to spread the good word and to save more children. You're not doing it out of pride.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Can I just add? So I have a lot of children, but I never talk about the fact that I have a lot of children. So when I'm actually going to speak, I only speak about one of those children. So I never, like, I try not to intimidate the fact that I've got lots of children. And even if I'm talking about going to Rwanda and Kenya, I may have met 4 of my children, but actually I only ever talk about the one, because you don't want people talking over the money. Like even just me saying, some of you might be thinking, oh, that's however much pounds that she's spending on her compassion children, but for me they're my children. Like I don't have children of my own, so like I invest in them, and I love writing letters. So since I've come back, my mission in life is now to write a letter every month to them, which is really hard work, because it's just hard work when you've got to try and write however many individual letters. But since meeting them, that's something that I came away, because that's something that they so strongly love. And so for me, that was something that I needed to do, rather than the 3 a year that I sometimes only managed to get round to. I now try and send 12 a year, plus birthday, plus Christmas. But and that's not for everybody. So I'm not saying you've got to write a letter a month, do not. But again, it's just about the one. I'll always just try and focus on the one, even if you've got 2 children. But the benefit of maybe having more children is if you're going to a church and they are within a certain project in, say, Kenya, and you've got a child from Kenya, talk about that child, because you can connect and they can connect with you as well, with the fact that your child is also from the country that they're supporting as a church. So that's always another good tip as well. So
thanks, Amy, that's great.
Child.
Thank you. Toby, did you have anything to add to that?
I was just thinking that obviously if you choose to sort of, and I guess the precursor to you going to a church is deciding that this is a thing you feel you would like to do, and you feel that you've reconciled in your own heart that that's okay, that you're good to go. And I guess it's just, you know, if you're going to a church to talk about compassion, they know why you're there, and we're sending you there to do that thing. So it'd be quite odd then if you didn't then talk, you know, because do you know what I mean? That would be a little odd. So I guess, you know, it's going in line with what everybody else is saying, I suppose. In short, it's, you know, if you've made that decision, you've reconciled that in your own heart, that this is a thing that you want to do for the right reasons and that you're okay with that, then but the next stage of that is saying, well, I'm being sent somewhere to do that exact thing, so I don't need to be shy about doing it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. And
I think just to add to that, I think don't forget, you're not going along there because you've chosen to do it. You're going along to talk, and you're going to share about children because God has asked you to do it.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And also, Claire, just to answer your other question about timings and, you know, when you're available, absolutely. You know, you can let us know when a good time's for you, when a bad time's for you, and we'll always ask you, and you can always say no. You know, it's not a problem at all. You know, what we usually do is try and find the nearest speaker to a particular church, and ask if you're free. And obviously, people aren't always free for a myriad of reasons. So, you know, please don't worry about saying, no, I'm really sorry, I can't do it at the moment. It's absolutely fine. We can just ask another volunteer. So thank you for those questions. That's great. Nikki had her hand up for a while, unless the questions have been answered. Nikki, have you got to?
No, it's fine. Thank you.
You're okay.
Yeah.
And who else did I say? Oh, Angela. Angela, do you have another question?
No, I just wanted to reply to Claire, answer to what Claire was saying.
Yeah.
About right hand knowing what the left hand is saying. I totally understand where you're coming from, but I believe, as Ian said, that is when you do things with public mind, with public intention for people to, you know, to praise or see what you're doing. But at the same time, in Matthew 7:16, it said, by your fruit they will recognize you. And you going out there, you know, telling people your testimony, because that's a testimony that you're giving out. You know, you sponsoring kids. Doesn't really matter to me how many kids you sponsor, but you stepping out in faith, you actually stepping into faith, giving faith to somebody else. So I just encourage you, as your fruit, by your fruit, the people will know that the kingdom of God is on earth. So that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Angela. That's really encouraging. Thank you. So I think we're coming towards the end of our time now. So unless anybody else has got any burning questions, I'm going to hand back to Alex, who's going to finish off our evening for us.
Brilliant.
Alex, are you there?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yay.
I have been gripped to my seat with these amazing questions and amazing responses as well. Hopefully, those of you that asked them feel like you had a satisfactory answer. I'm aware that it is gone 9 o'clock, and we don't want to keep you for any longer than we have to. But I did just want to run through a couple of what next. So you come to the end of this training, now what? And we really want to just pray for you guys at the end. So if you can bear with us just a few more minutes, I'd love to just run through that for you. So what next? So you've completed the training. Hopefully you've got a clearer understanding now of what it means to be one of our volunteer speakers. And off the back of this training, one of our team, either myself, Hilary, Holly, or Vladdy, will get in touch with you. We'll give you a call one-to-one and discuss the next steps. And I just want you to remember that this is a discernment process for both of us. We both need to feel comfortable that this is the right role for you. You might have further questions that pop up after this meeting, or we might want to ask you a few more things. And it might be that having done the training and gone through all this effort, you actually feel that maybe this isn't the role for you after all, and that's absolutely fine. And we can chat about the possibility of you being able to serve in any other ways. There's loads of ways that you can volunteer for Compassion. This is just one of them. But if after all of that, it's agreed that, yeah, you're up for it, you still want to be part of the team, we have to, as I'm sure you can appreciate, tick a few boxes. That includes things like a DBS check, a character reference that we'll take. We have a data protection video training thing that we ask you to view, and it's all about handling the data of children's names and things like that, and how you go about doing that, making sure that that we're kind of protecting the children that we work with and serve. And then we'll take a few more details from you, like one of the questions that was asked earlier, kind of how far you're willing to travel, whether or not you have access to a car or whether it's public transport. Either is absolutely fine, and we're more than happy to pay your travel expenses. And whether you're happy preaching, for example, like, are you happy standing up and giving a 20-minute preach, or would you prefer just to give a 5-minute presentation, perhaps like you've done tonight? We'll just get all those details on our records so that we know the kind of things that we're asking you to do when an opportunity comes up. Then also, again, as was mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out some resources for you, things like a pull-up banner, a bunch of Compassion branded pens, some generic leaflets, and then for the individual services that you go to, you'll get the child profiles specially prepared and sent out either to you or to the church for that particular event. And we'll also share with you a thing called our digital toolbox for you guys, which is just an online repository of presentations, service plans, videos, all kinds of things that will help you craft your own presentations. Now, I'm conscious that there's over 30 of you in this training, so it might take a little while for us to get round to calling you all. So please don't panic if it takes us a couple of weeks or more to get back to you. We will get round to you all in due course. So just please bear with us on that. And also, as you know, because we've got nowhere else to be on a Wednesday night, we're still journeying through this UK COVID roadmap, and I'm sure you're as hopeful as I am that that it all goes to plan and the opportunities open for more social gatherings and all sorts of stuff. And we're also starting to see opportunities for speaking engagements starting to fill the diary for sort of May, June and beyond, which is really exciting. But we just want to also say that if you have any reservations at all about speaking, about going out into public gatherings at this time, even after social restrictions are lifted completely, please don't hesitate to let us know, because we want you to feel comfortable, we want you to feel safe. Your safety as a volunteer is right at the top of our thinking. So please do not hesitate. We will not think anything less of you if you say, actually, I'm not comfortable speaking right now. We'll totally understand that. So that's kind of the last of the what next. And we just want to end by, I guess, commissioning you guys and thanking you for your time. I started, if you can remember way back to last Wednesday, I started our session by sharing a video of Richmond kind of talking about the need to speak up for children. And it's all rooted in that wonderful verse of Proverbs 31:8, to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. And I wanted to finish our time together by just returning to that scripture. You know that God has given each of us a voice, and our voices, whether you know it or not, gives us power. It gives us the power to share our stories and the stories of the children that we sponsor. And we know that you're going to do a great job doing that. And you'll possibly remember that I also shared this quote from Richmond, who said this, that sponsors must rise up and become advocates. They have to reach out within themselves and do all that they can do, and then go beyond that to be able to call people who they know have potential to rescue a child, to rewrite a child's story, to bring light where there is deep darkness in a child's life. You know, Richmond is so passionate about that because that was his story. If we had time, I'd share a video, but there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to catch up with that. I think it's probably even on YouTube if you Google Compassion Richmond's story. But Richmond's father was murdered when he was young. Him and his mother ended up in one of the worst slums in Uganda. A path that was written for him was one of hopelessness. And we look at where he is now. He is a pastor in Uganda. He oversees a pastor's discipleship network, which has seen thousands of churches come through training that he oversees. And he's also a trustee of Compassion UK. He's mine and Hillary's and Holly's and Vladdy's boss. He is on our board of trustees, and what an amazing difference he is making. And that is the story of all of these children that are waiting for sponsors, and that we believe that you can help us to find sponsors for. You know, one of the things that strikes me is that when we speak up for these children who have no voice, metaphorically, we do more than just lend them our voice. We actually allow them to find their own. As Richmond, and do you remember Liz, who shared her story as well last week, and countless others can testify. So as we kind of close our time together, we just want to pray an abundance of blessing and God's favor on you as you start this journey of being a volunteer speaker for Compassion. I want to thank you again for lending us 2 evenings of your time and all of the preparation you put in for the workshops today. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Ian and Amy for their amazing input, and for all of our staff team who helped facilitate those groups. There were so many of you that we had to call in favors from all of our friends, but that's such an amazing thing to have to do. And we want to pray for you now as we commission you into this ministry of speaking on behalf of this amazing organization that I get to call my employers. So Father, I just thank you so much for our evenings together. I thank you for the enthusiasm and dedication with which everyone has approached this, for all of the effort that they've put into thinking about even applying in the first place, to kind of taking notes in all of the training sessions and preparing their stories and sharing them with us this evening. Thank you so much for each and every one of them. It's such an encouragement to me, and I'm sure to all of my colleagues, to know that we have amazing sponsors who are willing to say, yes, I want to use my voice to help this ministry and to find more sponsors for more children. Lord, we are releasing children from poverty, one child at a time, as has been said this evening. Father, I thank you so much for everyone on this call. I pray that you would bless them, whether they go on to become volunteer speakers or not. It doesn't matter, Lord. I just pray that you would continue to bless them, continue to encourage them in their journeys of being sponsors. And Lord, as we close our time together, that this would have been an encouragement to each of us, that we would leave this Zoom meeting, okay, possibly with a little bit of Zoom fatigue and achy eyes, but with full hearts and feeling absolutely inspired and encouraged in our journey as sponsors of Children Through Compassion. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you. And you know where we are. You've got our email addresses if any other questions come up, and we'll be in touch in the next few weeks. So bear with us as we get round to each of you. God bless you all so much. Thank you. It's been an amazing encouragement for me to be part of this, and I hope it has been for you too. And with that, we do this thing at Compassion whenever we end a little Zoom call or a Teams call. We just feel the need to wave. That's just what we do when we're in Zoom, isn't it? So give us a wave and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.